The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Nicole Hennessy, Vice President of Music Biz. I hope you're all home and safe and healthy in this crazy time. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us today for our Chartmetric webinar. We have a number of webinars coming up over the next weeks and months, and with the postponement of our annual conference, Music Biz 2020, until August, I will be sure to be filling in that May timeframe with some great webinars as well. So we'll be announcing some of the new additions to the webinar series in the coming weeks. But for now, you can find all of our webinars at musicbiz.org. Under the events tab, just go to Common Ground Webinar Series. I did mention the postponement of our annual conference, normally scheduled for the second week of May because of the COVID-19 crisis. We have postponed Music Biz 2020 until August. Our new dates are August 16th through the 19th, still at the JW Marriott in Nashville. Just rotating out to the August timeframe. That is a Sunday through Wednesday pattern. You visit Music Biz 2020 for more details about the event, for registration, for the schedule, and if you have any questions about transferring your registration or your hotel room, if you've already made those reservations and registrations, transfer should happen automatically. But if you do have questions, feel free to reach out. It's nicole.hennessy@musicbiz.org. And we look forward to seeing you all in August. Sad that we're not seeing you in May, but completely understand under these circumstances, we should not see each other. But we'll be, definitely ready for an industry get together in August. So excited that we were able to postpone in that way. But until August, as I said, we'll keep up with the webinar series. We have a number of other things in the works for you guys. And Henrik, who is on my team, has been working diligently to compile on our website what the industry is doing, other ways to support artists, to support record stores, how the government is supporting small businesses, compiling all of that information on our site. So be sure to visit musicbiz.org for that compilation of different resources. So with all that said, I'm going to turn it over to the real reason you're here today, and that is to hear from the guys at Chartmetric that are bringing you their 6-month Breakthrough Artist report. We have with us today Jason Joven. He's the manager of content and insights, as well as Rucker. Rucker is their digital strategy lead. So the guys are going to tag team here today and present you with some really cool information. This report was available a month or so ago. So if you haven't had a chance to, read through it, they're going to be going through it today. If you have had a chance to read through it and have questions, as they're presenting, feel free to use the questions box on your screen. The guys will incorporate the questions in as they come through if it makes sense. If not, they'll be answering them then at the end of their presentation. So use that questions box on your screen for that. So without further ado, Jason Rucker, I'm going to turn it over to you, put myself on mute, and here if you need me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And thank you to the Music Business Association in general for having us here today. We're super excited to do it. It's a crazy time we're in right now. And it's also the fact that we're all working from home. And so if you hear a weird drilling noise in my background, it's just because someone nearby has decided to do some remodeling. So I apologize for that. Thanks everybody for being here today. We're Chartmetric. My name's Jason Hoven, and Rucker is gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about 6MO in general. But for anyone who is maybe curious about us as a company, if you're not familiar, I just wanted to do a quick little intro about that. We're Chartmetric. We're a small company. We started in 2016, and we're based. Our engineering team is based in the Silicon Valley area. And so we've got a data scientist and computer engineers, and that's kind of like the core of where our app comes from, our music analytics app. So essentially we have customers that are from major and indie music labels, artist managers, people in the live space, people in the branding space as well, people from creative agencies, booking agents. A lot of whether one or both of your feet are in the music industry, there's a use of our tool so you can kind of get an idea of who seems to be trending across the 20 different platforms across streaming or social media that we cover. We try to aggregate them in a web interface, and you can access it from your phone as well. You can follow artists. We're following over 2 million artists currently. And so ever since we started collecting data in about late 2016 up to now, we've been able to kind of aggregate it, display it in a way that makes a lot of sense and is hopefully easy to understand. Obviously, that's a balance that we're always trying to optimize, but that's essentially our core in what we do. And we do things like publish a blog. We have a podcast called How Music Charts. It's available in anywhere that you normally listen to podcasts. And we also have fun things like this, the 6MO semi-annual report, of which this is the second edition. So Rucker, do you want to talk a little bit about 6MO in general?
Yeah, sure. Hey guys, thanks so much for having us. So with this report, what we really wanted to do, because obviously we have so much data at our disposal, and a lot of it it's just constantly being refreshed daily. And so we got to a point where we wanted to look at a longer time period and see if we could pick out any interesting trends. So we launched our first report last year, which looked at the first 6 months of 2019. That's the one Jason's pulling up right now. So that looked from January to June, and we were mostly looking at the top. So like who gained the most on various different platforms, from Spotify to YouTube to Instagram. And we also, and that was a part one of it. And then the second part, we went into a sort of platform playlist analysis. So looking at 4 DSPs, Amazon, Apple, Deezer, and Spotify, and looking at each of those streaming platforms' top 30 playlists, and doing a genre and an artist genre and geography distribution. So to sort of break down how these top editorial playlists stack up in terms of market share for each of these genres and artist countries. So with this report, which looks at, so our new report, which looks at the second half of 2019, so from July to December, we wanted to drill down a little bit and look for maybe not necessarily the superstars, to try to find some more breakthrough artists. So in part one, we looked at a lot of the same platforms in terms of percentage gain, but we had different constraints so that we could see artists who maybe weren't necessarily, you know, Beyonce and Jay-Z. And then for part two, we looked at playlists on the same streaming platforms again. But this time we looked at essentially what artists were added the most, and to corner the breakthrough artist market, if you will, we wanted to look at first-time playlist ads. So what artists were added the most for the first time. So on Spotify, which has obviously a lot of user-generated playlists, if a new user generates a new playlist and that starts gaining steam and they add a bunch of songs, those are all first-time playlist ads. So essentially, we were trying to filter out songs that had been, or artists who had been on a playlist before, or songs that had been added and removed and added and removed multiple times. And as you'll see, the story is a little bit more complicated than just breakthrough artists, but that says something in itself, obviously, about playlist behavior on these platforms. And without further ado, I'll let Jason take on part 1 so we can dive into more depth about exactly what we found.
Cool. Thanks, Rucker. So yeah, so I'll go through part 1. Rucker will go through part 2, and then maybe at the end we'll save some time so we can do some questions if anyone has any. By all means, please feel free to share them in the chat, and we can try to get to them either during the talk or if we can just kind of go on a tangent for a little bit, if it makes sense, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. So this first part we called Rising Artists, like Rucker was explaining. This was kind of one of our threads that we kept from the first semi-annual report that we did for the first half of 2019. And except we really tried to focus more this time on emerging. So instead of kind of looking at who had the most of X, whether that be Spotify monthly listeners or Instagram followers or what have you, we try to focus on percentages and percentage gains within a certain kind of segment of the artist population. Like I mentioned before, we have over 2 million artists that we're tracking on Chartmetric. And so we were now trying to point the spotlight towards, that, I don't know if middle pack is the right way to put it, but people who are just gaining a lot that might not have so much of, the mainstream media's attention. And that was really kind of an area where we felt like our data set could really shine and provide some insight to you no matter where in the industry you sit. So that's what kind of where we're going for here. In addition, we also added a few new data sources that include Bands in Town and TikTok. And we thought we wanted to show a broader data set as well. So that's kind of the background for this particular section, but let's go ahead and just get right into it. So this first one is called cross-platform performance gain, or CPP is what we call it for short. So one of our strengths as a company, there are a lot of other tools out there. We're big advocates of music and data practice in general. We think it can really help everybody. So, we're not, afraid to mention that, Soundchart's another tool out there. Tunes is another one that's very artist-centric. Next Big Sound used to be, that was basically, the OG. That was like our predecessor. They were in the game almost a decade before we were. And they really paved a lot of the music analytics path ahead of us and really beat that drum in the street on how important it was to kind of look at this data and have it inform whatever decisions you're making every day. So one of our kind of like strengths is Chartmetric is we kind of use data science as a way to synthesize a lot of it and simplify it. I think one of the things about data today in 2020 is that there's so many different streams of it. You're in, Apple Music for Artists on one tab of your browser, and your other tab has your Instagram analytics up, and you're trying to make sense of all of it. And then you've got a bunch of Facebook comments from the Philippines coming in that you're trying to reply to. There's a lot of stuff going on, and we're trying to synthesize it and make it easy to digest. And so CPP for us is a ranking system, essentially. So every day, every 24-hour period, we run all of our 2 million artists, and we try to synthesize 9 different platforms. If you can see here on the right, we've written a blog article that gets more into the nitty-gritty of how, but essentially this ranking takes Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Wikipedia from the social side, and then also Apple Music, Deezer, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube from the streaming side, certain statistics within those platforms, and then synthesize it into a ranking system that is dynamic enough to, every day it'll kind of renew itself. So if your artist drops an album or has a crazy Twitter storm happen, it picks up on it and it'll affect it enough where you can see the change day to day, but not so much where it's meaningless. And that's a theme that we'll constantly kind of harp on. If you kind of look at any of the stuff we've written on our blog or listen to the podcast that we do, is finding that optimal balance. And it's probably gonna be different for everyone, but for us as a tool, we're always trying to find what's optimal. And so essentially what we have here is kind of like a top 10 according to how much ranking that they gained between July and December. And so that's what we're looking at. You can see some names that maybe, depending on where you sit in the industry, you may or may not recognize. But we can go through a few of them real quick. So Don Tolliver is a US kind of trap and B artist, as I believe he's described as. And he started, in already a pretty good place on July 1st, was in 9,300 kind of area in terms of ranking. And then by the end of the year had already gotten up to 112. And that was mostly because of his single called No Idea, which if you were not up in TikTok when that came out, he put that, it's essentially like it's like this spacey, very kind of dreamy, it's got a lot of reverb on it, kind of a R&B vibe, that had, the hi-hats that very reminiscent of trap music. And it put it out, and it just essentially became a really big TikTok hit. There's over 1 million TikToks that kind of came out that used a lot of slow motion effect videos, which kind of fit the vibe of the song, and it kind of went viral from there. So that was a big driver for what we think raised his ranking during this 6-month time period. Number 2, Kim Loaiza. Is a Mexican artist. She used to be a beauty vlogger. I still think she's active on her YouTube beauty vlog, and she has a ton of followers on it. She got an Instagram following that by the end of 2019 broke over 15.4 million. And she essentially started a second YouTube channel where she put out 2 singles in the second half of 2019. And her YouTube music channel had over 5.2 million subscribers and 160 million views by the end of the year. So that's kind of her story. And, we try to kind of go back into what these particular artists did in the 6-month period to try to kind of uncover, what's the story behind the numbers. That's essentially what Rucker and I do in our day-to-day, is we try to, make sense of the numbers, because sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story. Matter of fact, by definition, they don't tell the whole story. So I think what we try to do is act as that layer of kind of culture and that layer of narrative that helps give reason and why, and what can we do from here. Whenever you see these cool, colorful pie charts and bar charts on our tool. I will keep moving on because I'm talking too much. So again, feel free to pop in any questions in the chat if you have them. So this is YouTube channel views gain, again, from July to December of 2019. And obviously, YouTube is a huge platform for the music business. That is not news to anyone. We view it as one that obviously is unique in the fact that there's a visual that accompanies the audio assets. But at the same time, it started in 2005. It has the most pull and name recognition when it comes to wherever in the world you sit. Whether you're in a high or low socioeconomic status, YouTube is just a de facto platform in so many ways. And so we kind of looked at, in this particular chart, the top 10 artists who had the most percentage gain in channel views. So from July 1st to December 21st, who gained the most? And you'll see some names that may or may not surprise you. So first off, the outlier here is Billie Eilish, who comes in number 5 here. She gained over 1,200 percentage gain in her own personal YouTube, not personal, I guess it's personal and professional at this point, YouTube channel views from in H2 2019, which is worth noting because not only did she make this kind of top 10 chart, which was not based off of, again, absolute statistics, because if you can see in this kind of column right here, by the end of the year, she by far had the most channel views, hands down. She had over 4.6 billion YouTube channel views at the end of the year, which is bananas. And if you're a bit of a music data nerd like Rucker and I are, you'll know that if the higher a number is, the harder of a percentage gain there you can get. And the fact that she still shows up on this list really tells you what kind of career she had in the second half of 2019, because she's still here. A few of the other highlights is Ashniko. So Ashniko, if you're not familiar with her, she is from the US and kind of Europe at the same time. She's got a very interesting kind of come up story. But essentially in July of 2019, she put out this anti-boyfriend anthem, Stupid, featuring young Baby Tate. And it triggered countless hip-shaking dance videos and brought her channel to about 51 million views by year's end. So that was kind of like a big gain for her. Roxy from Poland was essentially a junior Eurovision champion, in case you're familiar with that. And she kind of got out of her, I'm a sweet young artist phase and went into where I'm an edgy kind of Roxy now. And that happened for her in 2019. She put out 2 music videos and did really well on YouTube. And so that's why she came in number 2. Another one I want to point out is Midian Lima. She's a Brazilian gospel singer. She came in number 4 here, 1,500 percentage gain in her YouTube channel views. And what's kind of cool about her is not only is she a gospel singer, which is a really big driver in the Brazilian music space, is a lot of her views you kind of don't see on her channel anymore. Because if you go to it, you can kind of see, some of her videos which have done really, really well. I don't know if you get audio on this or not. It's okay if you don't. But we have, for example, this one, I won't even venture to say it because my Brazilian Portuguese is non-existent, but it has 115 million views, which will show up on her YouTube channel, but is not necessarily contributing to her YouTube channel views. So this is kind of a case where you have an artist who has music that has done very, very well, and probably at one point was a video asset on her channel, but got, there was a business deal that went on, and now this aggregator, MK Music, which aggregates a lot of Brazilian music on their channel, has gathered up to 150 million views, which is just bananas. She has a few other works like that as well. So just something to keep aware of when it comes to kind of an artist and their YouTube work and kind of where it can go, because sometimes what you're looking at doesn't necessarily go on their own YouTube channel. We'll keep it moving. So Spotify monthly listeners gain, if you're not familiar with this one, so monthly listeners is distinct from followers. It shows the number of unique listeners who've played an artist's music, and it could be just one track during the past 28 days. And so it's not a calendar 28 days, it's just the past. So it's like this running tally of how many unique listeners you've had. And so our top 10 here is heavily kind of dominated by a lot of American artists. As you can see, number 8 is Social House. They had a big hit with Ariana Grande, had a 414 percentage gain in monthly listeners. Shade, number 5, did this track called Trampoline, which is kind of like this kind of indie pop electronica track that came out. It also, I think, was part of an Apple iPhone commercial campaign, which really did well from them. And on top of that, they had Zayn, the ex-One Directioner, kind of hop on to one of their remixes. And obviously, that does well. If your artist ever crosses paths with a boy band member, it's usually a good thing for their career. So they had a 567% percentage gain increase in Spotify monthly listeners. Another YouTube TikTok beneficiary is Arizona Zervis, who did the track Roxanne. Did really, really well on TikTok. It was just TikTok. It was just so memeable. If you listen to the song, it's just got a very kind of like R&B / trap kind of pop vibe to it. And I think one of the interesting things about Arizona Zervis is his work ethic is actually crazy. We looked into his history, and he had released a song once a month since maybe 2016. And so he's been consistently releasing music and been very, very kind of savvy with his online presence. And it's really good to see that when he put out Roxanne in the second half of 2019, it really paid off for him. He kind of tops our list here at over 2,400% gain in Spotify monthly listeners. And mind you, this is a kind of a very temporal kind of measure, Spotify monthly listeners, whereas followers, it'll stick around, and yeah, it's possible for it to lower, but usually it'll always go up. Spotify monthly listeners is usually very sensitive to kind of what you're doing right now and how it's resonating in the past 28 days. So, Tones and I, of course, is, kind of like the new Lil Nas X for the second half of 2019, and she shows up here. But we'll see. We'll see if these same people are still going to be on these lists kind of as time goes on, because other people might shine, they might go off cycle. It's really kind of an exciting statistic to look at. So next is Instagram follower gain. Instagram, of course, the mainstay for a lot of artists when it comes to kind of connecting to their day-to-day kind of lifestyle of what they do and what their life is like. Number 1 here is Rod Wave. If you're not familiar with him, he's a rapper based in the US. He loves posing with stacks of cash and is just just showing how he lives. And so he came in number 1. He released a new album called, Ghetto Gospel, that came out in November. And that followed up a mixtape that he put out in June called PTSD. And so he really was very consistent in the way he kind of put out work. And after he put out Ghetto Gospel in November, he went from like 1 to 3,000 followers on Instagram gain per day, all the way up to 10 to 15,000 per day afterwards. So it obviously did really well from him. He went from 211,000 Instagram followers to almost 1.4 million by December 31st. So really good thing for him. MC Pose do Rodo is a Brazilian funk DJ and producer. And he posts a lot of kind of like day-to-day life stuff on his particular Instagram. And he is kind of like one of the latest kind of like faces when it comes to the Brazilian funk scene. Very active on the platform, and also says something about Brazilian fans kind of like they really take to Instagram very, very well. We wrote a little bit about it in our Trigger series, blog article series that we did on kind of Southeast Asia and Latin America, and that was kind of one of our findings, and he's definitely a sign of that. There's more I want to talk about, but I want to keep moving on. So next up here is at the track level for TikTok. So as we all are so eager to learn about, this ByteDance Chinese social / video platform is like the latest craze. And if you've got kids, they're all over it. It is without a doubt the place to go if you want to get a track viral. Everyone's trying to put out a dance challenge at this point, or fun lip syncs. And up at the end of the day, it's really up to the TikTokers themselves. If there's something that they want to interact with and have fun with, that's where they will, deem you as worthy or not, for better for worse. And so this is kind of what we do. We're tracking a trending chart on TikTok. So essentially, if you look at tiktok.com/trending, you'll see a collection of videos that TikTok, the platform itself, deems as trending. We're assuming that has something to do with the number of engagements it has, when something first gets uploaded, and then it kind of promotes those videos to a trending status. And so we collect that over time. What we're able to do is basically look at the audio assets that are part of some of these trending videos, and then start to understand how many TikToks are attributed to them. So in really cool examples here, we've got Harry Belafonte, who is obviously, he is the Jamaican American king of Calypso, and he had this track called Jump in the Line. And it came out, when was this? In 1961. So for everyone working with catalog, TikTok is definitely a place to take advantage of it. This Hot Shell Ray, Tonight track is also very much catalog. Lowrider from War, also an old one. It's a place where TikTokers really don't care about how old or new a song is, as long as it's something they can make a fun video to. I like to focus on this Kane Brown one if you're in the country space. So Kane Brown put out a song like a rodeo on his, I believe it's his last album. And the funny thing about it is it's a slow kind of ballad song. And what ends up happening is it's a bunch of people doing these acrobatic dance moves to a country ballad song, which is probably not the first guess I would have had when it comes to what kind of video we should do with it. But it became a thing, and it did really, really well for the track, and I'm sure Kane Brown is super, super happy to have that be a thing. But it made a lot of fun videos. So, TikTok, obviously a very viral platform, and it's highly uncontrollable, but very exciting at the same time. So next up is Shazam chart occurrence gain. So essentially here we're looking at Shazam, which we're all familiar with. It's, whenever you hear a song at a bar or a party or, off the TV, and you just want to know what it is and you can't figure it out, you pull out your phone and you hit Shazam. And so these essentially were the top 10 artists who had the most gain in chart occurrences. And what we mean by that is if you go to shazam.com/charts, you can see for yourself, this is where we get some of this information, is you can look at a country level or at a city level, kind of what people are Shazamming the most, which is super cool. And we collect that, and we're able to, in this case, we focused on Mexico City just because it's such a huge streaming city, and what we like to call a trigger city because it's kind of one of these cities that isn't your typical New York, LA, London, centers of of culture, but they are now just as, if not more important than a lot of these traditional kind of focal points for a lot of English content, because they're kind of deciding kind of what's interesting in their scene, and because these cities a lot of times have larger populations with better or cheaper access to mobile data, they're changing the streaming platform scene. And so we're trying to show that here with Mexico City and Shazam, and a lot of really cool stories here. Some names that probably are not a surprise, like The Weeknd, Maroon 5, Bad Bunny from Puerto Rico, a lot of NWA from Puerto Rico, a lot of kind of artists who maybe, Spanish language, Mexico City, sure, that makes sense. But it really just depends on, some things that we sometimes can't even explain. For example, the number one here, who went from two artist chart occurrences from July 1st to over 100 by the end of the year, is Lou Bega. If you're not old enough to remember Mambo Number 5, I don't know if I'd suggest you checking out Mambo Number 5 because you'll have it in the head for the rest of your day, but it is a very catchy song. It came out in the 90s, and he came out with another song called Scatman and Hatman. And for whatever reason, Mexico City really just loved that song. We couldn't really figure out in our research why. I can only assume is maybe in a movie that was popular, or a TV show. There's a commercial campaign that featured this song, but for better for worse, it kind of had the biggest gain here. So, Shazam being such a cool measure of, what's playing publicly and what people are, really actively interested in, obviously a great platform to do that. And I think, when it comes to, how COVID-19 is going to affect us, and the lack of public spaces there are, it'll be really interesting to see how that, when we do this again, what this list will look like, because it's so obviously affected by that kind of thing. I'm going to speed through the next two because I'm running out of time here. So Bands in Town, this is a New York City-based app that collects, essentially trackers is what they call their form of follower metrics, and kind of artists who are touring, who have really good interaction with their fans, even if it's as big as Eilish, big as following as Billie Eilish or Khalid. You have other artists who have a smaller following but very, very dedicated, like Cuco, the Mexican American singer-songwriter, and then also 17, the K-pop group. You have an interesting collection of artists who may or may not be as successful on the streaming side of things, but a lot of times their live following can be completely different. So that's what this is, and I'm just going to move on. Twitter follower gain, obviously Twitter, such a popular way besides Instagram, and probably one of the older ways for people to follow their artists. Really cool quick takeaways here is we've got two Filipino artists, Maris Racal and Loisa Andalio, who show up at number 9 and number 10, which is the first time we've ever seen any Filipino artists on any of these charts. And then we've got 3 South Korean acts. We have Stray Kids, this is a K-pop boy band, and then NCT 127. I'm so not hip. I'm sure there's a proper way to say that. And then NCT Dream, which is obviously related to NCT. It's like the parent group of the South Korean boy band, with 127 and Dream being kind of like subunits of it. And they each operate their different Twitter accounts. K-pop fans are huge on Twitter, and so that's why you see a lot of that here. And last but not least is Wikipedia. Wikipedia is kind of not your traditional music data source, I guess you can imagine, but we've always viewed it as a really interesting medium to measure curiosity. People who go beyond, I just want to listen to your stuff, to where are you from? What's your life story? What have you done outside of music? Those kinds of internal questions that people, actively go search for. And so we can collect that as well. And so that's what you see here. One of the big trends we pulled away in this particular list was most of them, unfortunately, passed away during the July to December timeframe. Sully was a K-pop idol who passed away in the second half. And there's a lot of cases where death, unfortunately, is a big driver for curiosity, and so that's what we definitely saw here, but it doesn't have to be. For example, Ava Gardner, believe it or not, the old Hollywood star, she popped up because they ran, and by they I mean what was it? It was, Rucker, want to help me out? There was a TV channel on cable that ran a special series on her, and she had
Yeah,
music as well.
yeah, Turner Classic
Thank
Movie.
you. Turner Classic Movies. That was Ava Gardner, and she popped up here as well. So that was, and that happened in the second half of 2019. So that's something you see here as well. I'm going to wrap it up. Sorry, Rucker, but we're going to move on to the second half, to the Playlist Ad Awards. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to drop them in, and I can get to them in the chat, or maybe possibly towards the end. Go for it, Ruck.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. All right, guys, so I'm going to take you through the Playlist Ad Awards. So just as a refresher, we looked at 4 streaming platforms, Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. And we looked at the top 5 artists on each of those platforms in terms of first-time playlist ads, both editorial and non-editorial, during this 6-month period of July to December 2019. And again, we wanted to focus on not so much the superstars necessarily, or we were hoping to, but more rising or emerging artists. And on Spotify, as you will see, that wasn't necessarily the case. So immediately you see Jay-Z, Kanye, Rihanna, Pharrell, and Snoop Dogg in the top 5, which are, you know, obviously huge legacy artists. But I think one thing to really notice, or the thing that popped out the most to us, is the sheer quantity of first-time playlist ads here. So you'll see the range from like 18,000 to almost 24,000 is far surpasses any other streaming platform. And again, this is for editorial and non-editorial playlists. And that's important because Spotify's real bread and butter are non-editorial or user-generated playlists, which we see if we zoom in on Jay-Z's story. So Jay-Z is interesting because obviously he's the founder of Tidal, which has a vested interest in promoting that service over Spotify. So his music wasn't on Spotify for 2 years, but at the end of 2019, for his 50th birthday, essentially, he brought his catalog back to the platform. So that can explain a big reason why he had so many playlist ads. And just to drill down a bit more, if we look at the playlist count for Jay-Z, so this is different from playlist ads, this is the total comprehensive count of playlists that Jay-Z had. You can see the disparity in the top graph on the right, the disparity between his total playlist count and his editorial playlist count. So that tells you that the non-editorial count is, you know, accounts for the vast majority of the playlists that he's on, which can serve as a proxy for listener choice. You know, these listeners are choosing to put his music on their playlists, and maybe they're just really excited because it's finally back to Spotify. But a caveat to that is the follower reach for these playlists. So if you look below that graph on the bottom right, his playlist follower reach between total and just editorial playlists, despite the disparity in the playlist count for those two, the playlist reach is way higher comparatively for editorial playlists, which just goes to show, I think it's pretty obvious, I would say, but it hammers down on the point that editorial playlists have much more influence, even though the sheer volume of non-editorial playlists is just trounces editorials. So let's move on to Deezer, where the story was a little bit more interesting. Obviously, Tones and I has quote unquote emerged already, but she really did break through last year. And towards the end of the year was when she was really established as an artist who had emerged. But so it's not surprising to see her at #1 on Deezer. We also have DJ Regard, who, and by the way, Tones and I was obviously a TikTok viral story, and something was similar with DJ Regard, who's a Kosovo-born DJ who blew up on TikTok as well. And once he hit streaming platforms, it was, it was kind of expected that he would hit the top editorial playlists by then. But it was cool to see him pop up, he was otherwise not known really, at least globally, before 2019. And another interesting story was Brazilian rock band Balara, which came into second place for first-time playlist ads. And I want to focus in on this story as sort of a correlate to the Jay-Z story, or a caveat to it, because you can see the playlist count for Balara is, I mean, it blows up around September, so around fall of 2019. But the editorial playlist count doesn't really move much. It's pretty much non-existent. And you can see they did have on the second graph, they did have an editorial playlist that tapered off from July to August. But once they weren't on that playlist, their playlist follower reach was effectively nothing. So all this to say, it's important to look at the relationship between different metrics, not to just use a single metric as a yardstick, because there can be complex relationships between different metrics. So even though they come in second for first-time playlist ads, those playlists didn't have much influence. So it effectively, they didn't see much success or progress from these non-editorial playlist ads. On Apple, again, we see Tones and I in first place. But we also see the power of collaboration breakthrough, because Social House and Lana Del Rey, who came in second and fourth respectively, both of them had pretty big collaborations with Ariana Grande. So obviously, I mean, by proxy, Ariana Grande should sort of be in here, but that shows you just the power of collaboration and what it can do for you. And again, we see DJ Regard as well, that TikTok story. So let's zoom in on Regard real quick. So like I said, he blew up on TikTok. So we kind of knew when Ministry of Sound released his track, which is a remix of Jay Sean's 2008 Write It. We kind of knew it would do well on stream. It would go to the editorial playlists immediately. But we wanted to track that journey. So we used our playlist journeys feature to look at essentially the journey of DJ Regard's Write It through these playlists until it ended up on a big Apple Music contextual playlist called Pop Workout. So we tracked it from more time-based playlists, like New Music Daily or Today's Hits, playlists that are very, very much based on now, on what's hot right now. Then to chart-based playlists, which logically, if it's going to hit those top 100 regional playlists, if it's on these, you know, time-based, what is hot right now playlists. But then the interesting story was that it went to these contextual playlists until it eventually ended up on Pop Workout. And by the way, on the very right column, you can see the playlist or the track overlap between these playlists, between every one of these playlists with Pop Workout. So this is one of my favorite features, is that you can see how much overlap there is between tracks on one playlist with another playlist. So you can sort of create an ecosystem of playlists and start to see which smaller playlists feed into bigger and bigger playlists. But to get back to this, what this told us was, or suggested as a possibility, is that contextual playlists can offer a longer lifespan for a track. So tracks can continue to generate streams once everybody's distracted by the next TikTok viral hit. These tracks, like DJ Regard's Write It, can continue to still be generating streams on contextual playlists, which are, as you probably noticed, pretty important and continue to rise in importance. And I think they will even more with the smart speaker. So let's close with Amazon Music, where the mix was a little bit different than all of the previous three. So number one, Jonas Brothers. But then number two and number four are country to pop crossovers. Obviously, Taylor has long crossed over, like a decade or more ago, but Maren Morris really only crossed over, you know, within the last couple of years. And this was interesting to us because in our last report, where we looked at artist genre and geography distributions on by platform on big playlists, we saw a slight bias toward the country genre on Amazon Music. So it was interesting here to see that two country pop crossovers made the top 5 in terms of playlist ads. And Amazon, as far as we can tell, doesn't have a huge non-editorial playlist ecosystem. So this says something about their editorial choices. And you can see this pretty dramatically here if you look at, again, this is playlist count. If you look at Maren Morris's playlist count, which the black line is Amazon, and the rest are the other 3 that streaming services that we looked at. And you can see on the bottom left graph, her playlist count just straight up during this time period. Whereas for Taylor, it was a slight upward trend, but not quite as dramatic as Maren Morris. And for Camilla, it was, well, the other platforms were much more effective for her, essentially. And I believe that wraps it up. So we have some time to take some questions or to answer any questions. So feel free to chime in with anything you want us to cover, and hopefully we can answer as to the best of our ability. But Jason, anything you want to close with?
No, just the fact that, this is what we do is we kind of like swim around in music and data all day. Rucker and I are musicians ourselves, and we just kind of love coming at this very kind of left brain, numbers kind of mindset, but then combining it with all the right brain creativity and art and culture side that gives context to everything. So we just want to really emphasize that, all of this is a way for us to synthesize, all the different kind of forms of love, dare I say, that come in through all these different streaming and social media platforms and try to make sense of it. So, that's really what we try to do in our app and anything we do. And that's just kind of like the culture of what we do at Chartmetric. So by all means, if you have any kind of follow-on questions, if not at this webinar, but if you just want to give us a shout, maybe it's this particular case that you're working with, with your artists or with your label or what have you, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm happy to give out my email. It's just Jason, Jaoson, at chartmetric.com. And, we'd be happy to start a dialogue. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Actually, Nasir asked what the difference between editorial and non-editorial playlists are. And essentially, editorial is created by the platform itself. So it's like an official platform playlist, for lack of a better definition. And non-editorial is user generated for the most part. That would be the key distinction between those.
Cool. I can take another one. So Mark is asking, how do you monetize the data you collect as a company? So essentially, when we collect the data, we provide it through our app, and so there's a monthly or a yearly subscription that we collect as Chartmetric. And so right now, monthly, it's 140 a month. If you go yearly, that goes down to, I think, 1,200. Well, it's 1,200 for the year, but it goes down to like 112, I think, per month if you pay it in one shot. And there's also like an API that we provide if you have engineers and data analysts or data scientists on your team, and they can connect to our API, and they can kind of withdraw data, and kind of basically bypass our front end. And they can kind of look at all the different forms and categories and sources that we have and kind of take out and withdraw the data for yourselves. So you can do your own spreadsheets and, kind of historical analyses, whatever you need. And that's another way that we basically keep the lights on. Every now and then we'll do a special project, which is something I've handled ever since I came on board in 2017. And by that, I mean, sometimes there's a brand, let's say, that wants to find, an emerging artist to do a campaign with, or, there's a live music festival that is interested in kind of starting negotiations with artist managers and booking agents. And so they want to use data to usually not kind of fill out their main stages, but maybe on the second and third stages where there's a lot of more room for negotiation and kind of leverage and that kind of thing. It gives them power. And the other way around as well, if you're an artist and you're an artist team, you can also use your own data to compare yourself with other similar artists. And, if you're doing really well, you can kind of get your way onto a stage. So those are the different ways that we monetize the data. Hopefully that answers your question, Mark.
Do we have time to answer one more question? So Jody is asking if we have a sense of paid influencers or influencing the virality of TikTok videos. Do you have a sense for that, Jason? Because I think it's sort of a mystery still, since it's such a brand new platform.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I know that TikTok is a platform, like they're starting to really build out their kind of, ad sales capabilities. Obviously, that doesn't need to be around if, influencers are getting paid to do it. I know they've got the Hype House in LA. If you haven't heard about that, it's where a lot of the top TikTokers, I don't know if they live there, but they basically go to this huge mansion in Hollywood and they make TikToks all day. So a lot of the big drivers are very compensated, but I can't really speak to what degree. It's really hard to say.
Yeah. And Lance, as far as correlations between social media and streaming, we've talked about looking into this. We haven't looked into it in an official capacity yet, but we have noticed some in an unofficial capacity, but that could potentially be a project for us to look at more in depth in the near future.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I think that's it. That's all we've got for now. Nicole, Henrik, did you want to wrap anything up?
I just wanted to thank you both. Great presentation, lots of information, lots of questions that I see you guys have been answering kind of one-on-one throughout. So great audience participation. Everybody, please stay safe, stay healthy. Music Biz is here. If you need anything from us or your companies are are in need of anything or want to share what they're doing to support their employees or the industry at large, please feel free to reach out. We love to hear the stories of what everybody's doing to stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and stay productive. So good luck to all, and we'll see you back on the Common Ground webinar series here shortly. Take care, and Jason and Rucker, thanks again.
Thanks so much for having us, Nicole and Henrik. We really appreciate you putting it together. Take care.
Thank you both.
Bye.
Bye.